may not be suitable for children under 13 years of age. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Patriot Prime here once again on another wild Saturday night, sitting in my office in the cold, surrounded by all these lovely plastic toys. And my guest tonight is Yoshi from YOSHICAST, an individual that I got to know, not personally, but through his website years ago when I first started my channel. Those of you who've watched me for a long time know that I love reviewing G1s. I started off reviewing G1s, and I love to go over the history of the character before I actually get into the review. And since Marvel Comics was my Generation 1 fiction back in the day, that's what I like to focus on the most. Now, I don't have my Marvel Comics anymore. I have them all in trade paperback form. And if you get a chance to find these Titan Books reprints, these are awesome. So when I was reviewing a figure, I remember the story, but I couldn't remember like the details or the issue number. So I was on Google searching, ran across his page, YOSHICAST. He did reviews of every Marvel comic issue. And he was the man. I mean, anytime I was like, okay, I'm going to review Chrome Dome tonight, I'd look up YOSHICAST Chrome Dome or Headmasters or something. And that's where I would get my refreshment from. And now I've got him on my channel. Yoshi, how are you doing tonight? That was a long intro.
I'm doing good. I'm really excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you are welcome. Let's see. We're starting to get people in the chat here. Well, first off, because a lot of people catch up later on after this is already aired, tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into the actual questions. Just let my people know who you are.
I'm a person. Yeah.
No cyborgs.
My name is Yusuf Tanha, but Yoshi, I got stuck with that in high school, and it works. It's one of those things where it's kind of like Cheers, where everybody yells Norm when he walks into a room. Like I went a long time where if I walked in the room, everyone was like Yoshi. So I can't shake it, and I've grown to love it.
See, and you know the age of my audience. You made a Cheers reference.
Yeah, there you go. I'm a Transformers fan, like everybody else here. I was never sucked into the figures like you apparently are from behind you, sir. I needed the core. I needed a handful. I needed Optimus Prime. I need stuff that I just didn't get as a kid. Where was I going with that?
I don't know. The train derails a lot in the show.
It happens. So me growing up, being exposed to the cartoon first, but also living in a poor household, it was hit or miss whether I would be able to actually watch Saturday morning cartoons or not and catch the latest episodes. And then I discovered the comics, and throughout grade school, high school, and now, like, I just amassed the original Marvel run. And as I was getting them, I was reading through them and taking notes and doing the blog that you found. And I just felt like, if I was at the time, especially I lived in Alaska when I started all of that, and I had to eBay up a lot of those books. I wanted to get my money's worth. So I started the blog. I put all of that together, and then I went back through the letters section, and I documented everybody who wrote in a letter to Marvel that had their address. It was 100 addresses. There were more than 100 comments, but only 100 of them had addresses. I wrote 100 letters, and I mailed them out, and 10 of them wrote back. And some of those people I still talk to today. It's kind of interesting. But that was all part of the website too. That website led me over to joining the Transmissions podcast for several years as a co-host, talking about toys and comics and all of that stuff. Then I started my own comic book, transformersreanimated.com. It's free. You can download it. That's the nickel version of my story, sir.
Well, nickel's about all it's worth here. That's awesome. I remember I only wrote into Transformers once. Remember when they did, I think it was issue 41, where they had the giant moon battle?
Yes.
It was Grimlock's Autobots versus the Fortress Maximus, and there was the scene. See, it's all flashing back. There was the scene where all the Autobots were stepping off the shuttle. It was just this mass group of Autobots, and then Marvel, a couple issues later, had that scene where it was just the outline, and you were supposed to write in and name all of the Autobots. That was the only time I wrote into Transformers, and they didn't post my letter.
I have a feeling, just based on what I'd read through all those letters, they got a lot and
I'm sure
had to cherry pick what they thought people like me would want to read, I guess.
And it was so much fun reading those. I guess it was like Facebook chats today. Just
yes,
you couldn't make your smart ass comment.
You can't do that today either. You can't put your address in a letter section in a comic book. But that's how fandom started back in the day. That's how people talked about whatever when they wanted to pen pal. Like I'm an old soul. I like doing that shit. So it was fun to send out 100 letters, which was what at the time was probably $50 worth of stamps.
Yeah, no kidding.
And to get 10 people who wrote back, you know, and I got a couple of letters from people who are like, this person doesn't live here. What are you doing? And then a lot of postal deliveries, like address unknown type of thing.
Right. There's a little yellow sticker on it.
Yeah.
And it's funny. You're talking about how you grew up with the comics. I remember, I guess I got my first Transformer comic in elementary school in issue 80. The final issue came out when I graduated in 91. So yeah, it went through me all the way through school. And I had no problem taking the issues in. I didn't care reading the latest issue of Transformers. I quit buying the toys once I hit high school, but I kept buying the comics because the stories grew with us. I mean, they got a lot more mature as the issues aged.
Have you read any of the follow-ups Simon Furman did with like Regeneration 1 or
Yes,
84?
I have all those in trade paperback too.
Good man.
Very good man. He's the one that really brought it back from the brink because these had some silly stories in them.
Yes, they did.
Well, Simon Furman came on. I was like, oh my gosh. And that's when he really started killing characters off. I was like, wait, they die? They don't come back? All right. Well, let's see. Here we got Craig. He just ordered from Toyhax for Getway. Nice. The Throttlebot upgrade is great. I hope you use my promo code. Little promotion there. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into the questions. I got
what's your promo code?
Are you familiar with Toyhax?
Yes. I want to know what the code is.
It's Patriot. You punch in Patriot at the end at your checkout, you get 15% off your order.
So easy.
So easy. Easy to remember. Yeah, I started getting Toyhax back in 2012. And I was just looking for stuff to review, and I thought, I'm going to review these decal sets. And Toyhax actually reached out to me about a year later, and we've kind of got a bond now. I'm their figure supplier.
There you go.
Because I have people saying, I wonder if they're going to do decals for this figure. Yes, they are. All right, so on and on. Let's go in. Question number 1 is, what's the appeal of Transformers for you?
Classic good versus evil. Like there's no, when you're a kid, there's no questioning. Like you can like the bad guys. My brothers certainly love the bad guys, but there's no gray area. It's just like, you know how to be a bad guy, or you've got a role model for being a good guy. It was black and white for me. I grew up on John Wayne too. So, you do have a lot of that. Like, this is just, to me, it's like, this is just the right way. So.
Yeah, and the bad guys always had the cooler stuff. You look at all the bad guys in all the series, they always had the cooler stuff. They always got beat, but they did have the cooler stuff.
They did. I feel like I'm going on a tangent. I'm sorry.
You tangent away.
When it comes to a bad guy, when I was younger, it was Soundwave, because I just wanted 1,000 tapes. Like, I feel like that gimmick has not been driven into the ground yet. Like with Blaster and Soundwave, like just oversaturate the market with 1,000 different tapes, please. Because I love those things. Those are just it's like, you buy a PlayStation, you have to keep buying games for it. Like you buy Soundwave, you got to keep buying damn tapes for them. Like,
and they kept having the tapes coming out even after they discontinued Soundwave, which was cool.
Yeah, but I still feel like more. Like yes, more.
Well, look at now. If you follow the newer series, Netflix Soundwave came out couple of years ago when the series came out. There was actually a remodernization of Soundwave. It turned into the cassette deck. He came with 2 cassettes, and then everybody just scrambling. We need more. We need more. So they came out with Rumble and Ravage. Excuse me, Frenzy. They didn't give us a buzzsaw, though. And then you got all these third-party companies. They're the ones making the other figures. But we still don't have a buzzsaw. I mean, we got Squawk Talk and Beast Box and all those. And then you got cassettes that turn into the little drones. Remember from the show, there was the one that went down, checked the energon, and it's awesome. I like you. Just keep making those.
Just keep doing it. Like, even if it's just color changes, like, just give them to me.
Yeah, Rodimus Primal here. Can't wait for Studio Series 86 Frenzy, the red one. Yes, Frenzy is red. Go to my grave on that one. That's like, one of the things I wish they would bring back, because they have with the engineering now, is why they don't do the gimmicks anymore. I loved gimmicky G1 figures, like the Headmasters, the Power Masters. They were awesome.
I'm on your side. They should.
All right. Question number 2. Aside from Generation 1, which is always the number 1 answer, what's your favorite Transformers fiction?
God. Generation 2. I'll take Generation 2.
Actually, the comic was pretty good until the very end.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, that was if I heard your statement correctly, that was, again, like, he wasn't ready to end it on 12 issues, and it was just forced, So.
And that's where the villain's name G-Axis came from, if you remember correctly, too.
I do remember. You were a toy guy, so this is the last figure I bought. Nice. And I haven't bought a figure for years, but I bought G-Axis because of the G2 tie-in in the comics and Furman. I know Furman's not too thrilled with it, but I had to have it. Yeah,
I couldn't believe they made it. I mean, he's come out
me either.
He just looked like crap, but to actually have the comic version was awesome.
I'm a little out of the loop, but do they even? I mean, to me, it seems like this can't be repurposed for another figure. This is just kind of a one and done. And
the only thing that I could foresee that repurposed into, and I'm talking heavy retool, is maybe a Thunderwing, because the jet's kind of familiar.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I have no idea. I wouldn't expect something like that just because it doesn't seem like an obvious retool to me.
Yeah,
but I'm not a toy guy.
So, it's going to make this next question odd. Do you have a favorite figure or grail in your collection, one that you would never let go of? I know you said you have a few Corebots.
That's a good question.
Of course, I don't ask stupid stuff.
No, you don't. No, you put me on the spot. The last figure I got, the 1986. I got this at a TF Con. I got a 1986 Devastator gift set. That was, it looks pristine, but it was missing the manual. And at the following TF Con, I was able to purchase a manual. So it's complete. That's one of those figures to me, like it's got a big memory. I'm an Autobot guy, but this one, I got this for a Christmas gift in 86, I think it was. But my family was so poor, unbeknownst to me, like the next day they returned it. And I was always asking my folks, like, what happened to that? Like, I only ever remember playing it on Christmas. Like, I've scoured our house. I've gone through what happened? Must have got lost. It's just,
it went to
my folks. Yeah, something like that. It was honestly 2012 or 13. My mom came clean and told me what happened. And then I was just on like, this is my grail. I got to go get this. Like, I got to have this back. Because somewhere in the back of my head, I thought maybe it's in a box somewhere. I just haven't looked. But that one, just with the story and what it means to me and how it's haunted me, is probably the one I wouldn't give up.
Wow.
But I have a boxed Prime, which means a lot to me. I came across a really cheap boxed Megatron, which is cool to have.
Yeah, because they're not going to make that one again.
Right. So I've got, but my core is probably Optimus Prime, Sea Spray, there goes my brain again. Optimus Prime, Sea Spray, Bumblebee, and yeah, those guys those were the ones I really wanted as a kid and never got until I was older. And thank goodness there's conventions where you can inspect and acquire them as you want,
and try to haggle, but it don't work much at conventions.
Oh, no. It's even
unless
worse.
That last day before they're packing up. It's like, listen, man, it hadn't sold all week. I'm offering you this.
Right.
My big thing was, it was the same deal. I didn't get a lot of toys growing up. My grandparents would hook me up here and then. I mean, you got your big toys, Christmas and birthdays. And I mean, you were scrambling to get lawn mowing money so you could go and buy, I don't know what they were, deluxe figures or whatever back in the day. But I remember saving up and getting all the Insecticons. I was so happy to get those then. I played with them so hard. I mean, you had your super glue with you because you were always breaking figures and super gluing pieces back together. Oh, here you go. Here's your important question. How many Rock Lords do you have?
I have one.
I have two, thanks to this guy. He sent me a couple. All right. Here we go. Still collecting. You're still looking for figures. What figure is your white whale? Something you would love to have. If you got this figure, you would I'm done collecting. There it is.
That's kind of how I feel. Like, I feel like I've got what I want. Like, so they'll announce something like this, and you're like, well, shit, I've got to have that, Prior to this, the last figure I think I purchased was I don't know what line it was, but it was Cosmos. And he is just so fun to play with. There was a period there.
The recent one, was it?
No.
Yeah.
No. But it was such a fun mold to play with, and I took it with me for like 2 years. Everywhere I went, I just like prop it on a building and take a picture of it. It was just super cool to fidget with. I really like that figure. But and I only bought that because I think somebody on Transmissions was telling me, like, you're gonna like this, Yoshi. I know you don't buy toys, but you need to get it. And I think it was $10. I bought it. I bought two after that because I just loved it.
Did he have the bowed arms? They were kind of bowed.
Yeah, it was the one that they repainted to be.
I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah,
I think it was like a Thrilling 31 or something like that. Somebody in the chat's going to know and give us the answer that we need. All right, so what's your favorite?
I'm sorry, my white. If I was white whaling again, I would love to get a Omega Supreme, a G1. That works.
Working one.
Yeah.
I've got one that will walk, but the tank won't work. Which is weird. You think the walking mechanism be the one that's shot, but the tank won't roll away on. All right. What's your favorite Transformer character? Any fiction, any media? I won't judge.
Has to be Optimus Prime.
Of course. Can't go wrong with Prime. Man, I hope he shows up at TFCon in Orlando. He's one of the ones that I would pay the money for his autograph just because. And the fact he's getting up there, and chances to meet him are getting slimmer and slimmer.
So just from the way TFCon ran that whole signature shit show the last week or so, I would spring for the VIP package if you can. To be able to have an uninterrupted amount of time to be able to just converse with the guy and get a proper signature and whatnot, rather than, the experience this time, like the first time I got his signature, all they had was the VIP package. Basically, you went into a room, you had a moment, you could actually chit chat about life, universe, and everything, get your thing signed, get a picture, and then leave. Whereas this time, I think it was $80, and you go up there, you get it signed, and there's just a fat lady screaming at you. That looks good. Next. That looks, and if you don't move, she's just on repeat. I mean, it's nails on a chalkboard, man. It's with him, it's really easy to strike up a conversation. I mean, you can pull up his Wikipedia page and find something that you have a similar interest in and just drop that, and then you'll talk for a while.
And that was me and Gary Chalk at the last TFCon I was at. I'm waiting in line. I walk up and we started talking, And of course, he saw I wear my Patriot Prime shirt, and he's kind of asking about the name. And I was like, well, I'm a former soldier. I was in the Army. I was in field artillery. And he says, well, I was in field artillery. Next thing I know, we got 10-minute conversation going on, and I could just feel the daggers in the back of my head from everybody in line saying, hurry the hell up, dude. But we were just having a good time. Just wasn't even talking about Transformers. Let's talk about military stuff. Let's talk about other things in our life. And it was great. Oh, I know who that's screaming, even though I wasn't there. Probably his usual handler.
I've never seen that person before, for whatever that's worth. But I assume they were a TFCon lackey, but I don't know.
No, they were really bad, the one we were at, because the big signage at the place, back, it was during the mask era, or as it was ending, and we had to wear those masks when we're in the dealer room. Okay, I can accept that. We're all crowded around each other. And then you go out in the foyer to talk. People are spread out. You take the mask off. You're talking, having a conversation. Man, they come up and just rip you apart. Either put your mask on or leave. I'm like, we're not in the dealer room. They're like, it doesn't matter. I was like, well, it matters because that's what you stated on the website. But, you didn't argue. I paid the money. I wasn't going to get kicked out. And we'd put them on. They'd leave. We'd pop them off again. So, yes, he can. Gary Chalk can talk. All right. So now let's shift into your creativity, what you're doing with Transformers now. So I'm going to kind of alter these a little bit for what you do. Is what possessed you, a grown-ass man, to research and do Transformer info on the internet? If that made any sense, that question. I'm trying to reword it here.
So I guess the context in which you want me to answer that for. So with my website, with YOSHICAST and doing the comic reviews, that's just, I think the kids nowadays call it active reading, when you bust open a book or a comic book and you take notes and you just, you get the most out of it. Like, that was just something it was a way for me to enjoy the comic book experience longer, was to write about it and then follow up on these people who wrote in the letters section. With transmissions, it was just my attitude and look towards the hobby, I guess. The biggest section for the podcast was the toys, and I don't know shit about toys, and I have no memory. I ask the same questions over and over again, but there's somebody who's listening to your show or whatever show. It's the first time. They don't know what a ball joint is. They don't know why yellow or white is going to fade to look like yellow in a few months.
And mentioned GPS really throws them out.
It just drives me nuts. I mean, like, it's the 21st century and you can't have white stay white. Like
well, now all the modern figures, they've got this obsession with translucent plastic. Back in the 80s, it was the gold plastic that was brittle. Now every figure is freaking translucent plastic with the hinges of all things. And it's ridiculous. They even got translucent weapons, which is stupid.
I'm convinced that anything stupid that they do is a cost-saving measure. I mean, like, this figure for a modern figure isn't as bad, but it's, for me, being a G1 purist, like, I miss my metal, I miss my die cast. Okay, you've taken that away, but then you've hollowed out the plastic so that it's damn near lighter than a feather. Like, it's just,
and if it tumbles off your shelf, it's done. I've got some G1s
exactly
that hurt my floor.
Right. Anybody that's heard me, my love for rubber tires on those old figures. Like, we had a fan send me a sack of rubber tires. Yeah. Like, you're charging $30 for this. Like, make it feel like $30, I guess. I don't know.
And they just keep getting more and more.
And maybe you can't have this level of detail with my nostalgia, but yeah, it's to get back to your question, I guess it's just, I was a fan and I got lucky that I was in areas that people seemed to give two shits about what I had to say.
That's awesome. And you get randos like me that actually use you for research.
Dude, that's cool. Like, I never in a million years would I have thought that. Never.
Well, it's just funny.
Like, and
go ahead.
every time my renewal comes up for that website, I'm like, do I really want to pay for another, 3 years?
Now, this we talked about this behind the scenes before the show started, but how I got to talking to Yoshi is I recently rejoined Twitter. I didn't want to, but after it got under new management, I decided to try again, and I've actually been enjoying it now. And I made a comment on Mike Seibert's podcast regarding something, and then Yoshi had a comment on there too, and I replied to him. I was like, oh my gosh, I know who you are. I researched you when I was doing reviews, and we got to talking. It's like, I'd love to have you on my channel because I used his site. I think I already went over this when I was researching my comic info, kind of dusted the cobwebs off. And it was just, it's cool how such a wide, huge world and these plastic robots bring all these people together.
Yeah. It's crazy to me. Like, I'm glad you found it useful. I was wondering who the one visitor was.
And then every now and then I hijacked one of your pictures too, because you couldn't find anything anywhere else. I was like, well, there's a good picture of that guy melting in the smelting pool. I'm going to use that one. Yeah, I love it.
It's not mine to keep. Knock yourself out.
What's that?
It's not mine to hoard. Knock yourself out.
I've actually been toying on a video idea. Everybody likes doing their top 10 lists. And I always go, anytime I'm bored, I always go back and read some Marvel G1. And I love the differences between the comic and the cartoon. Of course, all these years later, I've watched every episode of the cartoon. I've read every episode of the comic. And the differences are so grand. And I think the comic pulled off some of them so much better. I mean, I prefer Marvel's Shockwave to the animated Shockwave. Because that Shockwave is just scary. And he didn't care.
But you still read it in the cartoon voice.
Oh, exactly. That's where the cartoon
they complemented each other on a level.
I loved it. All right, let me see how I can. Well, we've talked about YOSHICAST. We've talked about the comics. We've talked about the podcast. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this. Tell everybody about Transformers Reanimated.
Man, Transformers Reanimated was made out of hate and spite and anger. So I had this saying. I used to like, we would review IDW comics on the Transmissions podcast, and I'd never buy any of them because I wasn't enjoying any of them. And I would always say, like, if you want me to open up my wallet once a month and buy comics from you, I have money, I want to spend it, I want to support comics, and I want to support Transformers, just write a story that we care about. Go back to the G1 universe. You can have all this other stuff you're doing with Roberts and More Than Meets the Eye and Lost Light. Like, that's great. Like, if you love that stuff, more power to you. It's not my cup of tea, but knock yourselves out. But if you want my money, make this. This is what I we set up a poll. I sent them letters, emails. No. All right. Well, the Transformers Reanimated, this little project it's filling in the gap between the end of the cartoon's second season and the 1986 movie. There's like 15, 20 years there that's just not written about. It's not a new idea. Other people have had this idea. Nobody's gone through it because they want to be, they want to be employed, I guess, and make money off doing the story. And I would love to read that, but nobody was doing it. So I wrote issue 1 on my phone. And while I was writing it, a friend of mine in Australia, Greg, contacted me because he heard I was doing something, or I mentioned to him. I forget what the story is because my memory is absolute shit. And he's like, I'm begging you, let me be a part of it. I'm like, well, it's done. Can you check, the grammar, the spelling, and make sure I put the apostrophes where they're supposed to be? And he said, yeah. I just want to be a part of it. So while he was doing that, with the first issue, I contacted comic book artist Casey Collar, and I said, please, will you do the cover, and will you just do one of the internal pages for me? So I've got something to send IDW as a proof of concept. Like, this is what we want. He's like, yeah, sure. So money exchanged hands. He went to work. I got it drawn, colored, lettered. So one page, the cover, the script, printed it all off, sent it off to IDW. I sent it to like 3 different heads of IDW. 3 or 4 days later, I get an email back, which is on the website. I don't remember what it says, but it essentially says, we didn't ask for this. We're not going to read it. Don't do this. We could get sued. Stop. Don't do this. Which I understand. But being a guy who reads a bunch of 80s comic books, who's read the letters section, who's like, who's heard stories of, we've sent in scripts, we got feedback about why we're a bad writer or why we're a good writer. If they had just said, Yoshi, these aren't real words in a sentence. Like, this doesn't make sense. Don't waste our I would have walked away. But I got so mad, and I'm talking to Greg on Skype. I was just livid with this rejection letter. And he's like, dude, we could do this. We could pump out an issue a month. And that was it. I built a website 24 hours later. We put up the first issue. The website crashed from the traffic.
Wow.
I had to fix the sequel. I had to beef up the server to get the website back up, but it crashed the website. Ever since then, we have put out an issue a month for, what is it? We're on 43 issues now, so 3 years. Each cover, I go out, find a comic book artist to do the covers. I can't afford to do the internals. We're looking at between $4,000 and $5,000 just to have the internals colored or penciled, colored, and lettered. But I just kind of put my money where my mouth was. Like, I've got this disposable income to a degree. I'm not trying to brag, but I do have it. Like, I would buy this, but now I'm spending way more making it. This is what I want. This is what I would buy. Like, let's somebody make it so I can stop doing it, or buy my stories, or have me come work for you so that this is out there. But that's what it's for free. You go to the website, you can download the covers, you can download the script, you can see how we're filling in the gap between second season and the movie.
And I'll stop him right there to say the website link is in the description of this video. So click
down
the description, hit the link, boom, you're right there.
Is that next to your promo code?
Nick, yeah, it's underneath. I promote you first, then I go into promoting me.
Well, it's very kind of you.
Thank you. I'm waiting on my pint glasses to come in so I can drink beer on the show and say, hey, pint glass on my site.
Yeah. But it's so I talking about the pandemic and having to wear masks and stuff. We started this, I want to say 3 or 4 months before the pandemic hit. And I am struggling to stay 1 month ahead of each release because I think people either were just busy with work from IDW, or they didn't want this potential conflict with IDW. But when the pandemic hit, the comic book industry shut down. Like, all these artists had time on their hands, and they wanted money, obviously. So I was able to get a bunch more names involved with the project, names that I probably wouldn't have gotten any other way. So I'm really proud of how the art's turned out, and everybody that's worked on it has been. I'm really proud of Greg and the stories he's written. We wouldn't be where we're at without him. We'll pick a topic. One of us will run point on that script, and then we'll get together on Skype, and then we'll just go through it. And this is what we like, what we don't like, make some edits, make some changes. And then we're done. Essentially, we're just waiting on the art to come in. Now I'm talking way too much. I'm sorry. Shut me up.
No, you go right ahead. This, like I said earlier, this show is about you. People know who I am and what my story is.
3 years into this now, we're at least on a bad moment. We're only 3 issues ahead with 3 covers done. Right now, we're about 7 issues. We're well past 7 issues, but we got 7 covers pretty much done, ready to go.
Now, are you the primary writer?
It's 50-50. Greg has brought in so much to this. There's no way it would be this project would be where it was without Greg or the artists that have contributed to it.
Now, does IDW still own Transform or do Transformer comics? See,
No,
I was
they
like
lo-
you. I got into them, and they just got so preachy and political. And I'm like, I think I quit reading. Remember, I think Amazon had all the hardcovers came out, and once I completed that wave 1 and the story ended, it was like the end. That's when I quit reading. And of course, then a couple months later, they rebranded everything. But I was like, I'm not investing in this anymore.
They lost the rights to Transformers January, I believe it was. And there's rumors floating around of who's going to get the rights, or who already has the rights, just hasn't announced it yet. It's kind of a wait and see for someone like me. I mean, if a small company picks it up, I'll shoot them an email and some scripts or stuff. But I mean, not to sound like an asshole, but it seems like weird that if they wouldn't be aware that we're doing this project, I mean, I know that people like Image want to see a completed comic book just to talk to you. And I a lot of these people are, good for them. They've got friends who are artists who will help them do that. But, $5,000 an issue, I'm going to wait on that.
Yeah, I'd say.
I don't have artist friends. I have them as friends now, but like, I'm not going to ask them to ever do that for free. That's ridiculous. There's some people talking about IDW storylines in your chat here. And there definitely were, for me, highlights in IDW books. Prowlestator was one of them that ended way too soon. And what is it? The Till All One series. Everything I should hate that IDW does. Like, I love that series. I don't know. It was just written well. It was interesting. I was totally into it. But most of their stuff just didn't work for me. But yeah, there were highlights, even in the stuff I didn't like, the DJD being one of them.
See, I missed out on those. I got the Tarn figure just because he looked cool, but I have no idea about the character and everything. I did some reading, and some subscribers sent me some info, and I was like, man, that is a badass group of characters. But like I said, I'm afraid I'm one of these. I don't want to go and buy that trade paperback with those stories because, well, I want everything else. I'm just not doing that again.
No, I hear you. You gotta you gotta cut off somewhere.
And I heard about.
Uh-oh.
Are we back?
Yep.
Okay.
You're there you go.
Okay. Wife's downstairs. Well, we went and watched Shazam, so now my son and wife are downstairs watching Black Adam.
Oh.
Getting their lightning superhero fix.
I just saw a comedy thing about that, calling him Black Shazam, and it was just pissing off Black Adam.
Never liked Autobot Megatron. I agree.
Yeah, there are ideas out there. I think they're worth exploring. I think the execution through IDW was just done poorly.
And when they first came out, they were all over the place. It wasn't until the trade paperbacks came out they put them in order. Because I remember they got those weird spotlight issues, and then you had I forget what they were all called, but you couldn't really understand what was going on. It's like, oh, okay, this one goes before here, so on and so forth. And Clank, you start with, if I can remember correctly, it's the All Hail Megatron books, or the Megatron Origins, I think, kicked off IDW. In order, if you go the book route. Amazon has them all in hardcovers, what I have, but I think they're ungodly expensive now.
The other thing I didn't care for what they did was, like, when I was a kid, a comic book most of the time, not all the time, was a one and done.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could pick up an issue of Spider-Man and not feel like, I didn't read the other 275 issues. Like, you got a nice contained story. Granted, they were also more than 20 pages like they are now, but that was a big beef I had with the IDW stuff. Like, they were writing for a trade. They weren't writing for the issue. And that was one of the things that Greg and I really tried to do with this, was that, you could start with issue 43, I think is the latest one, and it's a two-parter. It's the end of a two-parter. I really feel you could read just that and feel like that was a good story. Like, I don't feel like I'm lost without the other books.
I tell you what,
Kind of like
killed me.
it was like a cartoon episode. Like you could jump in anywhere and be okay for the most part.
Well, with that, what killed me with comics in the 90s, because, man, I love comics, grew up with them in the 80s, 90s. But then it got to the point, if you wanted to read this issue to be continued, say this is Transformers, to be continued, but you got to pick up Captain America 43 to follow the story. So you get Captain America 43. Okay, now you got to get Ghost Rider. Oh, stay tuned. It'll be in the next issue. And when I started having to buy all these multiple comics for one story, I'm like, I'm out. I can't afford this anymore. And, of course, that's back when comics, I don't know how much they are now, but when you were hitting $2 and $2.50 for your comics back in early 90s, when I'm working my job at Kroger and trying to afford a car payment and everything else, just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Sitting there looking. Okay, here we go. Rodimus knows these things. IDW began with infiltration, escalation, Avengers. Okay. And All Hail Megatron. Yeah, All Hail Megatron was my favorite story. I think that's the first one I read. And then when the books came together, that's when I started buying them all in order according to the way they had the books put in.
Right.
All right. Well, I guess we'll hit with this final question. What are your future goals for the series? What would you like to see happen with Reanimated and what you're doing right now?
Well, we've got a loose roadmap to get us to the movie, and this is fun. This is fun to put together. Let's see, what else can I talk about? We spend an equal amount of time on the scripts as we do talking about what artist would be good for what cover, what would they bring. I love working with artists we haven't worked with before. I'm a big art guy. Like that's been my primary collecting focus with Transformers, even before this. Like I collected a lot of original art, and I love it.
Speaking of that, real quick, interrupting you, as I was a big art fan too. And what killed me with the Marvel comics was when they would change artists, and sometimes it would just totally ruin the story for me with the different artists that came in. Because a lot of people did, but I loved Andrew Wildman's art and how he kind of humanized the bots. And then you got all this build up to issue 75, and they changed artists to Geoff Senior. And I'm like, oh man. And then went right back to Wildman. I was like, why did you do that?
But you see, like looking now, like you've got people our age who just, even if you hated Geoff Senior at the time or Andrew Wildman at the time, now you look at him with reverence and nostalgia.
Exactly.
Like, if I can get those guys, which I have on our book, like our downloads just go through the roof, man. Yeah, what was I? And Andrew Wildman just penciled the Transformers UK Royal Mail postage stamps.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah,
so follow him on Facebook.
Yeah, those turned out really, really well. Let's see. One of the things I can tease is that we have a G.I. Joe crossover coming up.
Ooh,
and we were able to get Chris Batista to draw those covers, who worked on the original. He worked on the books, some of the books of the G.I. Joe G2 crossover from the 90s. So it's nice to have that little callback in not only the artist, but the art that they're going to be putting out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. You're always excited about the last thing you've written and everybody to see it. But there's like 4 episodes or 4 or 3 issues before then. It's, you hear artists talk about that on the Tonight Show and stuff. Like they're always happy with their last album. Like I'm happy with the last script we put together.
That was the greatest one we've ever done.
Yeah, exactly.
I was in there just thinking about how back in the day I couldn't stand Geoff Senior's artwork. But then I was doing the research. Once again, I got G1 review coming up on Brainstorm. And issue 75 was another one of those, we're going to kill off a bunch of characters and don't have to fool with them. And how gory, he really made some deaths, like Brainstorm, the figure I'm going to review next. If you recall in that comic, that's when Unicron scoops down and grabs a handful of Cybertron and pins Brainstorm on the tip of his claw. And he's in there looking at it and says, oh, these are Primus's children. They're just tasty. I'm like, That's messed up. I didn't realize how messed up it was when I was a kid. And you're like, that's really messed up now.
Well, I know that what was it, in the 90s when Derek Yaniger signed on to draw Generation 2, the big selling point was that because they're robots, they're not bound by the gore rule from the Comics Authority. So he was allowed to draw robot gore with oil and sparks and
That
wires
scene
as
where
much as he wanted to.
Where Megatron's coming in and his arm's all mangled and he's got half his face ripped off. I'm like, oh, I love that.
That's awesome.
Good stuff. Well, my friend, that pretty much wraps up all my questions for you. If there's anybody in the chat's got anything, we'll ask that, and then we'll kind of wrap this up, because I promised Yoshi, I said we don't keep this any longer than an hour, because it is 10:45 here and 7:45 there, and we got stuff to do other than this. But this is always a blast, and like I said, I appreciate you coming on. I have enjoyed
Thanks for having me.
Meeting you. So, oh, hey, Papa. This guy does more live streams than I think news stations.
Oh,
he helps me at work. I'm bored, and I was like, oh, I can always guarantee Papa's got something going on.
Nice.
So, anybody got any questions for Yoshi before we shut her down for the night?
It's all good. You're a toy channel. I appreciate coming on, man. It was great. I like G-Axis.
I was like I've mentioned so many times, it amazes me how these plastic robots over the years brings people together. I have met more people and made more friends doing this than probably all my years in the service. I mean, my pretty much my whole Facebook group is all, well, how you know that guy? Transformers. Went to school with him. Transformers. Okay, here we go. Rodimus is hitting you with one. Was there any reanimated issues that fans question how it would fit into the continuity properly?
Yes, but nothing that like we'd already planned about and we're going to address in a future issue. Like we haven't really slammed into a wall where we made a mistake, if that's what you're asking. But yeah, there's been some cliffhangers or some story arcs where people are like, how's that going to fit? But you know, we do have the answers, and it's just like you got to wait. And one other thing I want to say is I know it's for me, being a dyslexic, it's intimidating to download a free comic book and stare at a wall of text. But for several issues, we have podcasted a reading of the issues. So I forget, it's like the first 20 have been voice acted out.
Oh, that's cool.
If you're so inclined. We want to get back into that, and we will. I'm sure even if the book stops, like we're going to go back and hit that. Like that's definitely on the to-do list.
That's awesome. Now, do you have a podcast going on now, or is Reanimated your thing?
Just with Reanimated, you can subscribe from the website for the podcast to listen to the readings. But yeah, my focus has just been on Reanimated. Everything else is taking a back seat.
Well, I guess with all the work you said that went into it, I don't blame you one bit.
It's so fun though. Like, I mean, it's like us talking about all this stuff and nerding out. Like Greg and I just nerd out about this. Like it's a good way for us to spend an evening. We get a lot done. It's fun.
I know nerding out is so much fun. Like I said, that's why I'm looking forward to it. TFCon. I could care less about buying any robots. I want to meet my friends again, hang out in the bar, and drink our military grade margaritas.
You're gonna have a blast. I hope I can join you.
I would love to see you there. All right, so that's pretty much going to wrap it up for tonight. Once again, big shout out to Yoshi for joining me tonight for the SITREP, so I could pick his brain a little bit about Transformers comics, both past and present. Big shout out to every one of you in the chat that's joined us tonight, and for those viewers who are seeing us right now for the first time on this recorded video. So make sure, hit that like button, subscribe. I am trying to reach 20K subscribers by TFCon in October. I'm like 92 from 15K right now. And go down into the comment section, or not the comment, the description. Click the link and get yourself addicted to Transformers Animated. So that's pretty much it.
Reanimated.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I get on a tangent. I lose.
Thanks for having me.
Reanimated.
Thank you.
Animated to the series. All right.
Thank you for having me, though. This was
You're
a lot
welcome.
of fun.
All right, guys, have a great night. Hooah!